Hi, this is Mr. Payton. Welcome back to Mental Fitness. Today I want to come back to a topic we've discussed before, and that is self-awareness. So let me set the stage for today's piece. At my assignment, I had a PE, physical education again, and so met up with an 8th grade group. And you guys, this is why I love being an educator. I learned quite a bit from them today, just in their honesty and some of their ignorance, but not in a negative way, but just their naivety. They just didn't know. And so we were having this conversation. And I think some of it centered around the fact that last night was a Super Bowl, and we had a lot of West Coast rappers on stage. And so the kids were talking a lot about, some of the gang stuff that happened in the 90s and talking about Crips and Bloods. Shout out to Lake Pleasant Elementary, where I was at. The students and I had a really good conversation. One of the things we talked about was this idea of race, particularly staying in our corners. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Oftentimes, whites, blacks, Hispanics, any groups, we like to stay in our corners and talk about the other groups. So girls would go in the corner and talk about the boys. Boys would go in corners and talk about girls. African Americans would go in corners to talk about whites. Whites would go in corners to talk about African Americans. And so here we were, all of us in this group. And one of the things that I shared with them is I said, when I was younger, one of the things that was always confusing me is to hear people talk about hair color when it came to people who were not African American. So the kids were like, what do you mean? I said, so for example, there happened to be like 4 or 5 girls standing in a circle. So I pointed out one of the girls and I asked the question, so how would you describe her hair? And the comment was, well, she's a blonde. I said, well, there are 3 girls who kind of have similar hair colors. How do you, determine the difference between the two? And so the comment was made, well, she's a blonde, and she's a dyed blonde, and she's a dirty blonde. And so this may seem like a very basic conversation, but what I was trying to show them is that as African Americans, we probably have just as many questions / opinions / stereotypes about whites as they have about us. And I said, what would be most helpful is just to go ahead and get some of these discussions out there in a respectful manner. And so there happened to be a young African American lady there, and so we were kind of laughing and nodding as we were asking these questions. Because a lot of the questions that I get come in the form of like my hair. So for example, I have wavy hair. And some of the girls have extensions, some of the hair are curly, some of the hair are straight. And so they get these questions, but one of the things that'll happen that's a little on the more disrespectful or ruder side is people will just walk up to African American girls with extensions or with long hair and just start touching it. And in any culture, I don't imagine that that's a thing that you can do, just walk up to people and grab their hair. Or for me, in my case, people will say, can I touch your hair? They want to touch the waves, quote unquote. And so we really started to have this conversation about what's appropriate and what's not. I said, to walk up to a stranger or even someone you've seen at school a couple of times and just start touching their hair is not appropriate. 1, you're in their personal space, but 2, the head in particular for a lot of people, that's a fairly, dare I say, intimate space. And so it was a really rich conversation, I believe, and I thought it was very beneficial. I learned quite a bit from those young people as they started to just share some of the things that they think about and talk about. It takes a lot of courage to be in a group, and yes, I'm a teacher, and so maybe they felt a little safer, but it takes a lot of courage to share questions, to be willing to be vulnerable, and just let some of these things out. And one of the reasons why I wanted to share this video with everyone is that I think often during Black History Month in particular, we talk a lot about the past. We talk about contributions of people of the past. For me, I think it's an opportunity to, yes, absolutely acknowledge the past so we can be aware of what has happened. But it's far more important for me that we start to move things forward. And I think discussions like the one that I had today with those young people at Lake Pleasant Elementary is part of what we can do moving forward. Start to have those conversations. Again, to ask questions of someone is not disrespectful. It's not racist to do that. Just make sure you're doing it in a respectful manner as you're talking about. If I'm walking up to a gentleman who's played hockey for years, I was an athlete in high school and in college, but I didn't play hockey. So if I'm going to ask him a question, I'm just going to walk up and ask questions about the game, the skill sets and all those things. There's nothing disrespectful about that. It's when we come to the table with stereotypes or preset opinions is when it can be difficult for the other party to understand. So I hope that this was beneficial to you. I hope you got some value, and I hope maybe that you'll be willing to have some conversations with someone who's not like you. This is not just about race. It could be about gender. It can be about any set of beliefs or anything that makes us different. Those are all opportunities for us to learn and come closer to each other. So again, this has been another episode of Mental Fitness, and this was the area of self-awareness, knowing what we do and don't know, and being willing to be vulnerable so that we can learn more about ourselves and others. Thank you, and have a great day.